All right, folks, good evening and welcome. It's 6:05, so we'll call the meeting to order of the Bylaw Review Committee. And as I said earlier, I hope everybody's had a safe and not warm, but a good start to 2022. So this is our first meeting after a few weeks off, and I wanted to go back through and just go over a couple of things to make sure that we're all on the same page here of how we're going to move forward. So first up on the agenda is just a basic update on general code. So right now, based on the timeline that they had submitted to us, we're expecting in February a submission of the preliminary draft, which would include all the editing and the stylization from general code. And then from there in March, they're suggesting that there's a review of the preliminary draft and submit any changes we might have back to general code because we're trying to drive towards the spring town meeting in 2022, which is going to be on May 3rd. So as I understand it, I don't know that we're going to make any substantive changes with the existing code right now, but I certainly would open that up for discussion. But my thought is that we're trying to take what we have, we're trying to get it redone, reorganized, and set up in the new format, get that approved at town meeting, and then send that off to the AG's office. And then once we get that approved, or while that's waiting for approval, then we start working on changes that we have to make. If it's getting rid of a bylaw, or if it's adding a bylaw, or making substantive changes to some of the existing bylaws. So is that what you folks understand as well, or do you have a different take on it?
Yep. I had a conversation with Brian today, and there were two things that he thought might be good to have on this town meeting, in addition to just accepting general code's version of things. One was maybe we could do a bylaw to ban containers in the village center and maybe elsewhere so that they're not visible from the street or abutters. It's something to discuss anyway.
Okay.
And the other thing was the W district. If we're ready to go with that, we could try to do that.
So, Sarah, what's from your understanding, what's the holdup on the W district? I know that's been talked about for a while. I
think there was just some review that Deb was going to do, but I think Marshall knows more about it than I do at this point.
Okay.
I can say too. Deb Phillips had issues with the last draft we sent her, and sort of got tied up in, back and forth, and it wasn't the high. And when it missed the last town meeting, it just got it's sitting with her, I think, right now. Is that your understanding, Marshall?
Marshall is not on the meeting.
Okay.
But that makes sense. And again, I'm fine with any of those things. If we can do those things, that's great. But what are we looking to make any substantial changes to the existing bylaws, on the timeline that we have right now leading into town meeting?
Don't think we have the time.
No, I don't either. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that, though.
Yeah, for Glenn Hathaway, I agree with everything you said, Bill. There's not enough time. We just want to get through this to the end, and then there'll be multiple sessions after that to address this.
Right, because what we're actually doing right now is work for a few months down the road. It's not really going to have any impact on what we're going to do, I don't think, for Springtown meeting. If we can just go there and say, hey, look, here's what it's going to look like. Here's what we want to do. We haven't made any substantive changes. We just want to, get this recodification done. I think that's a vote that we can get. And if we have a couple other articles on there to make changes, then that's okay too.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of like Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Bill and Sarah and Glenn that we'll try to take it one step at a time and just go for the reorganization of the code and then start working on some changes after that. I think it might be too much to try to squeeze it all together right away now.
Okay, good. Now, Walt, did you have something else?
I was just gonna say, David. Yeah, I was just gonna say that I can think of one or two clauses, and Sarah can comment on this better than I can. For example, the whole one clause on the attached garage or whatever that causes people
Walt,
something like that might be easy enough to remove or modify slightly, but stick what we got in declining it. Are you?
Walt, unfortunately, we got none of that. You must have been going through a bad cell zone and we didn't get anything.
I got
Okay,
something about a garage.
Well, can you hear me now? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you're still breaking up a little bit, but it's better.
Okay, all I said is I agree, but I can think of one or two very minor clauses that might be easily extracted. And I was using the example that Sarah showed me of the issue, and Dave had said to me one time, the whole detached garage, clause that, makes you have to, attach it to the building when it should easily be able to be added. But that would be the most I would think would be considered sooner rather than later.
And that would be an easy tweak. That I don't think that would be a controversial thing to change the setback from the height of the accessory structure. There's a setback of the height of the accessory structure from the primary structure. And to get around that, people attach the buildings in this weird, awkward way. And
Yeah.
we should just make it 10 feet or something like that. Just
Okay,
pick a
well,
number
we
that's
can-
reasonable.
Again, I'm not dug in on any of this stuff. So if we've got some things like that seem to make sense and we've got a consensus on it and we think we can do it, then by all means, let's do it. And that way, they'll be in the corrected version of, when it gets published, we'll have those things clarified and make life easier for some of us. So I'm good with that. So that's kind of where we are with general code. I think we all saw that Marshall sent us an email with some new, some water regulations and some sewer installation regulations. I sent those off to Claudia. She confirmed back to me that she's going to include those in the work that she's doing now. So that's good. Even though he's not here, Marshall, thanks for digging those things out. So it's all good. So that's all I've got in general code. Does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns regarding general code?
No.
Okay, then what
Here.
what was that? Okay.
I think Walt said none here.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, so next up, we've got review zoning bylaw section 5.1 to 5.8. If I remember correctly, I think we've already been through this, but I wanted to just take a quick walk through it. And I didn't expect tonight that we were probably going to go the whole hour anyway, but I wanted to get us back together and get back in the swing of things here. So let's, we'll walk through those up through 5.8. And then the plan is, unless anybody has any major objections, to, take on possibly the rest of section 5 for our next meeting. But we'll discuss that a little bit further as we get along there. Based on what Sarah said, she thinks it's a target-rich environment in section 5. for things that need to be changed. So let's, is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right, then let's
Yeah.
start with 5.1. I know I had highlighted, and I can't remember if this was the group comment or if it was just things that I had done, because it's been a few weeks now, but I had highlighted actually on that accessory buildings, the 10 feet thing, which I believe is what Sarah and Walt were just talking about. So we need to try to do something there. Is that what you recall, Sarah?
Yeah, that was, instead of needing to be set back a distance equal to the height of the accessory structure from the principal structure, just pick a number. And I floated 10 feet. Someone else can float something else, but most accessory structures are taller than 10 feet. So that would make it kinder, and it might make it a lot kinder depending on what the accessory structure is. And it just makes it easier for people to wrap their heads around.
Okay, perfect.
And there are plenty of towns that have like accessory structures need to be 10 feet apart from each other. So.
Okay, anybody have any comments on that 5.1? Okay, 5.2, which was the new sign bylaw. I know there's David called out some concerns on a couple things there, and again, I'm not dug in on any of that stuff either. So when the time comes, we can look at making some modifications potentially on the new sign bylaw. Does anybody have anything specific they want to call out on that now?
I had in that email that I sent out with that multi-page email
Yes, yep.
with a bunch of issues, there were several things that I wrote about signs. I think that this is, it might be a standalone discussion to deal with signs. But anyway, the notes that I had, the internally lit signs, I know you're opposed to that. I questioned whether we were wanting to make it as strict as it currently is.
Okay.
I'm not going to die on that hill.
Just for clarification, it wasn't necessarily me that was opposed to that. I know when we did this with economic development, and we went to the then building commissioner, and so it was a consensus on that.
Actually, the building commissioner had a lot of issues with the sign bylaw, and none of them really got addressed. So I got a thing that Heather gave me that he wrote up of his issues with it. So I'm not, there are some inconsistencies and some things that I just think maybe we should rethink how strict we want to be on stuff. The internally lit sign thing just struck me as a little unusual to ban them. So I thought it was worth talking about, but we don't have to talk about that right now. The sandwich board signs can't be more than 15 feet from the premises. But if they don't own the parking lot in front of them, then they technically can't put a sandwich board sign out in the front of the parking lot. And so that kind of unfairly punishes, because the premises would presumably either be the building or the land, but if they don't own the land where anyone could see the sandwich board sign, just that was a little problematic, in particular with the Ashburnham marketplace sandwich board sign. And there might be other places where that would be problematic wording for them to be able to have a sandwich board sign out near the sidewalk where it's visible. Projecting signs are only allowed in the business and industrial district, not in village center commercial. I brought that up before and you said you thought that was just an error, and that's an easy one to fix.
Yeah, we can look at that.
We also had issues with the setbacks for signs, which actually isn't in my list here. That's something I discovered later. How, like in the industrial district, you need a 40-foot setback for your sign. No one can see it from the road at that point. So we ran into this with the Anderson timber cordwood people.
Mhm.
So we had a concrete example of a 40-foot setback being problematic for their signage, and they would need a special permit to be able to put it close to the road. 10 feet back from the road or something like that seems fairly reasonable for a commercial
did-
sign.
Did they apply for a variance or a special
don't know.
permit for it?
I don't know that they've done that yet. It's something that they were talking about doing.
Okay, no problem.
And there were some weird little things where stuff was mentioned in multiple places. So you might look up and say, oh, I think I've learned everything about temporary signs in this place, but then it's addressed in another spot too. So just the organization as a whole could be kind of tightened up, because I've actually had times where I looked something up and thought that I knew the answer, but then I flipped a couple more pages and went, oh wait, it talks about it again here. And I'm used to dealing with this kind of language. So a layperson could easily miss things. So I think just the sign bylaw in general is its own project to tighten it up and make it easier for people to understand. I mean, just the comprehensibility of it, in addition to these few tweaks that I'm mentioning.
So you think it's that difficult to comprehend? I mean, because the basis of that was from another community's sign bylaw that was in play, and we made some changes to it, some
Yeah.
tweaks here and there. So
There are a lot
I
of bylaws in play that are kind of badly written, and it was just the disjointed nature of it that I don't remember if it was temporary signs was brought up in multiple places. And I think there were a couple of different examples of that where it's, okay, can we just talk about that all in one section rather than continuing to bring it up in different sections, so you don't realize you don't know the whole picture unless you read the entire sign bylaw. So just a bit of organizing.
okay, that's fair. I'm okay with that. Anything else on that one, Sarah, that you've got?
I had a note here that said, Rick Travers said the new sign bylaw makes the town banners on the light poles illegal. I don't know if that's actually true. That was just something that I got from Heather, but I didn't actually look into it.
It would have been nice if he had mentioned that when we were talking about
Well,
it.
there's this whole thing that he and Heather put together and sent to the bylaw committee, and they said they got crickets in response.
He actually physically came to a number of meetings that we were talking about that, and we spent whole meetings with him going over some of the things that he had some concerns about. So
Well, that's good to know. I got a different version from Heather, so I don't know what
Yeah.
to believe. I wasn't
Yeah.
here.
boy, again, sometimes I can't remember what I did last week, but I don't recall him sending us like the email that you had sent to us previously about questions. I don't ever remember anything like that coming from him, but if it did, I'd love to see it again. So, but again, we're not gonna do signs tonight, but I'm open to any and all of those suggestions on those things.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a few, well, all these pages were things that Heather sent to me that he had produced. So there's several pages of stuff. And honestly,
Okay.
I haven't gone through all of it with a.
Well, I honestly, and again, this isn't to be disrespectful to him at this point in time. I don't care what he thought about it. I care what you think about it.
Right, but if
because-
he found something that didn't occur to me, I would like to go through his notes to.
Oh, yeah, no, you can reference anything you'd like to put your list together, but again, I just don't want us to get caught up talking about what Rick
No, I
Travers
don't
did or
either.
didn't do or any of that stuff.
I'm just saying that there's a whole bunch of stuff that he did put together about it. And I haven't really gone through it yet.
Yeah,
But I had a few notes of my own from me reading the sign bylaw and what jumped out at me. And that's.
Yeah, at
what
the
I
end of
meant
the
by that.
day, I mean, all of our goal in this thing is to make it better for the town of Ashburnham, and however that works out, it works out. It's not, again, I don't have any hills that I'm ready to die on for any of this stuff, to be frank with you, so. Okay, Dave, do you have anything? Glenn, Walt, anybody have any other comments on that?
I do not.
I think there'll be a time and a place for that. I agree with Sarah that there are some issues with the sign by law that I certainly think need to be addressed. I think Sarah's gotten a lot more comprehensive on it than I had up to this point, but I certainly agree with her that when the time comes, we need to take a really close look at this and possibly rewrite the whole thing so it's more friendly for businesses and residents in the town of Ashburnham.
Well, Dave, compared to what we had before, this was a much more friendly version of a sign bylaw. That I will take issue with you with, because that was the goal. The whole thing was like, you couldn't even have a sandwich sign board before. Well, they were illegal.
Yeah, I
So-
guess my biggest concern with that was the 40-foot setback for a sign in an industrial district. That to me, it makes it a little more difficult to attract a business in town if the first thing they got to do is get a special permit to allow a sign closer than the setback requirements for the building itself. Something like that, I think,
Yeah.
specifically needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with that. So, okay. All right, very good. Walt, you got anything?
Nothing else from me.
Okay, Glenn, you're all set?
I'm all set.
All right, so then next up would be 5.3, which is off-street parking and loading requirements. And I know there's been a lot of conversations about parking, the lack of the requirements for, business, any of that stuff with, so I think we need to take a hard look at parking. That'll have a significant impact on particularly downtown with our ability to attract and retain businesses down there. So I don't have anything specific that I've marked off there, but what are your thoughts on that, on parking?
I have some notes on parking, which I haven't really updated, so I might have more thoughts than just what I'm going to read here. Under basic requirements, under 5.31, it says an area of 200 square feet of appropriate dimensions for the parking of an automobile. That's actually bigger than is necessary. Most spots are 20 feet or 18 feet by 9 feet. So there's one thing that's just inconsistent with what's normally required for a parking spot. So I noticed that right off the bat. So perhaps we should just be more specific about what the dimensions are, the minimum dimensions for a parking spot are required to be, rather than area.
There are more pickup trucks in Ashburnham.
That's true, but an area is still a weird, rather than giving actual dimensions, because the width and the length both matter. The parking section also doesn't specify driveway or aisle width. Other bylaws do. I don't know if we care, or if we're just going to say, parking lots are laid out by civil engineers who use standards, and they're going to be going before the planning board, and they'll be reviewing it with those standards in mind. So maybe we don't need to be super picky. It's just something I've noticed in other bylaws that we don't have. Maybe the parking section should reference the Architectural Access Board and ADA requirements, just to remind people that there are other requirements. And that's something that would never need to be updated, because you would just say, you'd just be referencing those codes, but not anything specific in them. Let me see. Parking could allow some % of on-street parking to count towards the village center commercial and village center residential parking requirements, or have a blanket reduction in parking calculations for those districts. For instance, in Sterling, everybody in town center, the parking calculations that were required for a business were reduced by 50%. And given that we
So-
have a lack of parking downtown and it's hard for businesses to have enough parking, it seems like it'd be a friendly thing to do for those businesses to not make them strictly to
No,
have a
it's-
reduction.
One of the things that, and again, we talked about this back in economic development, but I don't know exactly what this means. I think I know what it means, but one of the things that was suggested was that we go to or think about this more of an urban model planning for parking. And what I think that means is that, like, if there's street parking, multiple businesses can count that in their requirement for parking. Is that a fair explanation, Sarah?
That's kind of complicated, though. That I think that's why they'll do something like there's a 50% reduction. So they're assuming the other 50% comes from the street.
Okay. Yeah, so the net result is the same, it's just cleaner language.
Right.
Okay.
And like we have the dentist's office near the, it's
Yeah.
not a Cumberland Farms, but that they lost 2 parking spots due to the driveway. And they called me down there to ask about whether they could put up signage to say this is for the dental office only, because people were parking there and going to other businesses and they were already down 2 parking spots. And I said, sure, I don't have a problem if you put up a small sign saying that this is for the dental parking only. But by the way, you actually need a handicap spot. So now you're down another spot for the general public.
Where did they lose the 2 spots?
They, where the sidewalk went in, they used to have spots there.
Yeah, but those were never legal parking spots.
I don't know, but this is
Yeah,
just
no,
what they
they're-
told me.
Well,
And,
there was always a sidewalk there. And then over time, it just wasn't clearly delineated and things like that. So matter of fact, I know for a fact that one member of the Board of Selectmen had a specific conversation with the dentist and said, these are not 2 parking spaces that you're entitled to, it's a sidewalk. And they painted them on there anyway. So
okay.
they can say
So I
whatever they
just got
want to
this from
say.
their office
Yeah.
person who called me to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah, no, they can say whatever they want to say, but
Okay,
you can't lose what you never had.
okay. So they never had them. They thought they had them. They like to pretend they had them.
Yeah.
But now they're down another one effectively because I told them they're gonna need to put in a handicap
Well,
spot.
again, not to pick on that one particular business, but the other thing is that they have parking behind that building.
Mhm.
And the person that parks in the front space in the building is the dentist. So if she's that concerned about her customers
She should be
parking,
parking.
maybe she could park out back. You know,
Is
and
that
have the
really her?
employees
'Cause
park out back.
The staff person I talked to said the staff does park out back.
Yeah, she had her Volvo right there in the front all the time. So anyway, that's her business, it's her spot. She can do whatever she wants with it, but to suggest that we're creating a problem for, I don't know.
But I don't have an issue with them saying that this is parking for the dental office only.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's what they brought me out there to talk about. And then I realized they don't have a handicap spot and that was a problem.
Now, if you had we'll just talk about that specific situation. If you had a handicapped spot on the street, would that count for that business? It would count
It
for
really
multiple
needs to be
businesses.
close. I mean, they have spots that would be perfectly good. They even have the aisle because of they have like 2.5 spots wide in front of the building. So
Mhm.
they can even, they don't have a problem turning one of those spots into a handicap spot because they have a little excess space.
No, I was just curious, though. I know they have space there to do that, but if you had a handicap spot on the street, is that just there in general, or does somebody get to count that as
I wouldn't, because it's supposed to be a spot close to the building.
in proximity
If
to
they
the
have
entrance?
spots close to the building, then the handicapped one should be one of those spots close to the building. So
Okay.
I think I would look at it.
To that point, Sarah, I mean, are those new spaces, are those not public spaces as the spaces are in front of the pizza store and the Cumbies? Aren't those all public spaces, or are the spaces in front of the dental office, is that?
They said they
belongs
own
there?
them. So it's
Okay, I
theirs.
guess you have to look
I-
at the lease then. 'Cause I was
Yeah,
gonna say, I always viewed it as public. It's like Dave's gets, all the people go to the bank park at
Yeah.
Dave. So there's nothing that says that's public. They'd have to put up a sign as you're saying they've requested.
Yeah.
We'd like to put dental only, but I thought when that was all done, Bill, that was actually public, the same as next to the pizza.
No, the only public parking that we have is street parking.
Yeah,
All the
okay.
other is privately owned.
It is
So
private.
now,
Yeah, okay.
And
in
Dave's
Dave-
is used as public parking, but it's really not.
It's
well,
not,
in
right.
Dave, because I've talked to Dave about this, Dave and the bank have a written agreement that they're allowed to use the parking as part of the arrangement that they have down there over next to his store. So that's something that they've worked out, but technically that's private parking. And if they want to put up signs that say, restricted for a particular use, then I would think that they'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the debates that people have brought up on a few occasions about the DPW. Well, why don't we turn that into a municipal parking lot? And the biggest problem with that is that you don't get any revenue from a municipal parking lot. You can't tax it. You're not going to put meters in it. It'd be a gigantic waste of space, because in today's world, I don't see anybody parking at the DPW and walking up to Main Street. I don't think that's in people's DNA lately, so.
Okay.
Bill, do you think that, I know that it's way in the future with the DPW moves and the town tries to develop that property. Would it be an idea to think about designating part of that property for public parking? If a developer
no,
wants to develop it?
I would
Yeah.
hazard a guess, Dave, I think that would be the absolute worst use that you could do to that property down there. We've got some information, actually, some renderings and things like that talk about potentially what you could do down there. One of the things that we've talked about, collectively in different groups is how do you make more on-street parking? And is there a way to do that as a way to provide additional public parking? But again, in my personal opinion, and based on what I've heard from consultants that we've been working with, putting municipal parking in like that would not be a good use of that resource for the town.
And as Bill said, people don't walk from remote parking spots.
Yeah, it's just it's not a thing anymore. So.
It was just an idea if we could designate a small part of the DPW building property for public parking. It was just an idea, not the whole thing. Certainly, I agree with you 100%. I think that would be a waste of a resource that the town has, but maybe if we could put a small section, 6 spots or something like that over there to try to attract some more people to come downtown. It's just an idea.
I think the
what-
intent was to put some commercial stuff over there, so there would be some parking related to that commercial stuff, which maybe could be used in a more public way.
Yeah, there is, see, Dave, what normally happens with these things is that piece of property will actually get sold to a developer. So it won't be town property anymore. It'll be a developer that's going to develop something based on the specifications that the town has put together or the town has approved, let's say. So again, it'll become private property, but we know we need to do some things with parking. We actually met with the folks that used to own what I call the center block downtown about that parking there and try to do some sort of some development of some parking down there. And, again, the conversation didn't go very far, but we're
What's the
certainly,
center block?
well, that's the strip of buildings right on Main Street there. The guy that used to own it, his last name was Zena. And,
Oh,
so that's what I commonly refer to it as, but it's
the gray
that,
building?
yeah, that gray building right on the corner there, and the parking behind it, and then the barber shop, and then Val Daigle's got some property there. So, looking at that whole thing down there, but those conversations haven't gone anywhere. So, but we felt there, you'd have a better shot of letting people park there, and then they'd walk around the corner to get to some businesses, but.
So my next notes on, these were just kind of technical things. 5.32 F and G conflict with each other. 5.32 H and I. I don't know why it's 1 parking spot per 2 employees per shift. I don't think that many people carpool. So that was a spot where it seemed like there was kind of not enough parking for a business. And then I have a note that says 5.32I, the calculation may conflict with other businesses in J through O. So which is it if you end up with 2 different calculations? The greater of the 2 calculations? It's not very clear. So
Okay, yeah.
So if it's 1 spot per 2 employees, but it's a business and the business requires 1 for every 200 square feet or something like that, then how do you deal with that inconsistency?
Okay, that makes sense.
And the last note that I had was parking in village center and PUD. Make sure the reference manual by ITE is still valid. So I guess there's some reference in here and I just wanted to make sure that it was.
Yeah, the
something
last
that we
couple
still
lines
use.
of references it.
So I have a note just questioning, is this still in use? Haven't looked it up. I just asking the question.
Okay,
And that finished my parking notes.
okay. Anybody else have any comments or such about that one? Okay, then let's move on to 5.4, minimum residential floor area. Or is that, wait a minute, hold on. Is that part of the parking bylaw there?
5.4 is just this weird little thing all on its own.
Yeah,
And it's purely talking about how small an apartment can be in a multifamily.
yeah.
I have no idea why it's even in here. It's just kind of odd. But
Are
so you
there
can't have a tiny little efficiency in Ashburnham.
no tiny homes?
No, this is a multifamily, so it's not addressing
Oh.
tiny homes. It's just kind of random. It's purely apartment size. And so you have to have at least 450 square feet for a 1-bedroom apartment and at least 600 square feet for a 2-bedroom apartment. But if you have a deficiency, I guess maybe there is no minimum. It's just kind of a weird thing to have in the bylaw.
Generally speaking, Sarah, in the building code, are there minimum space requirements for?
There are for rooms, but I don't think that there is one for I don't think they say anything about like a 1-bedroom apartment shall be bigger than X number of square feet. Because you could have a very small apartment. I mean, you hear about 200 square foot apartments or even smaller in New York City. They exist. There's no reason for building code to say you can't have them. I just find it a little strange that we bother to call this out and yet don't address minimum square footage of anything else, really.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
I would rather just make it go away because I don't quite get the point of it.
Sarah, I think my guess would be on this is that I think that I don't know who authored this, but I think that the author or the authors of this bylaw 5.4 were probably thinking of how to minimize the potential of a rooming house going in Ashburnham. I've read this before, and that's what I think they were probably thinking. Instead of saying rooming houses are illegal because somebody could fight that, I think that it was a roundabout way to try to make sure that that didn't happen.
That makes sense. So they don't want to carve something up into an 8-family by cutting in half a whole bunch of 1-bedrooms and making them 2 1-bedroom apartments, that sort of thing.
That would be my guess.
Okay.
Oh, that's a cat. I didn't know what that was.
She was crying at my feet and jumped up. Here she is.
all right, well, thanks, Dave. That kind of sheds a little bit of light on it.
Yeah, so it's weird, but I don't care if it's there or not. And if there's a reason about the rooming houses, I'm fine with it staying.
All right, well, I put a question mark down there about whether or not we want to delete that, so we'll circle back on that one. The next one, 5.5, wireless communication facilities and towers. You know, I read through this thing a couple of times, and I got to tell you, it's outside my comfort zone
Me too.
with what we could or couldn't do or anything, so.
I don't want to touch this one because I don't know enough about it.
It goes back, Dave was on that committee and during that time, and it was a committee that put this together, so an individual is not gonna read through and understand this. So this is similar to a couple other things we've touched upon. I think this is a number of people need to review this. Any kind of technology for the town, guess what? Every 2 to 3 years, yeah, you should take a look at it. You know, has it changed? What's going on with tower? Are there towers still out there? Is that what we're promoting, so forth and so on? So I think this is a group of individuals that need to look at that. Do you agree, Dave? You went through this for quite a bit.
I was the chairman of the committee to write the wireless,
Yeah.
the wireless bylaw. I mean, there's a lot of things in here that I don't really think are being addressed. I know that the co-location of carriers on there, they're
Yeah.
supposed to notify the town if they're doing that, and if they do co-locate, we're supposed to get a cut of what they're getting. I don't know if anyone's ever even
I
looked
had
at
no
that.
idea.
No one has. I remember you going through this. I remember, and there was a discussion even then. And again, we're a small town, so it's a matter of if someone brings up an issue, then someone's going to look at this. So, but
Yeah.
and Bill, you brought this up. This is 6 months ago. We actually touched upon this real quick and sort of said the same thing. But this is something that, again, this is copied from another town for this reason. It's that long, and why reinvent? So we looked at other towns and everything else, and there were presentations made by Dave's committee, and then finally ended up with this edited version from town X.
At the time, Glenn, we had no bylaw whatsoever for
Right.
wireless
Right.
facilities and towers. So we figured we should put something in there before they start
Yes.
popping up everywhere. And obviously with the idea to look at it again in the future, to tweak it and modify it so that it meets the time. But we figured something was better than nothing, and we should act sooner than later to try to get something on paper there.
Yeah, no, Dave, it looks like there was a tremendous amount of work that went into this, and I'm not trying to say it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's in and of itself a project, and I don't think it's anything that we should try to take a bite out of this right now.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, all right. So we'll just, again, we don't have to do anything to these, so we'll just, somewhere down the road, if somebody else wants to take a look at it and try to update it, then they can have at it. But I'm willing to take a pass on it for right now. All right, next up will be 5.6, which is soil, vegetation, rock, and gravel removal. Anybody have any comments on that?
I'm going to be honest here. I haven't reviewed this one yet.
Well, then I'm sorry, you're gonna have to leave the meeting then. If you haven't done your homework. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I look at this one honestly like I look at the cell tower one, and Glenn made the point. Unless it's a problem somewhere that
Right.
needs to be addressed, it's it's going to be one of those things we'll move on to the next one. And I mean, I made a note to myself because I had some questions about actually what went on down at the Bresnahan Center, where they removed a bunch of gravel and did some stuff down there, and they basically didn't tell anybody about it, and that's town property. So that's a sidebar on something else. But so I don't have, again, I read through it, but I didn't make any notes on anything to do with that.
It is one that I plan to read, but I just haven't yet.
Okay.
I was actually on a committee to rewrite the earth removal bylaw in Sterling. So I have a little
Perfect.
more knowledge about this. I'm not an expert, but I have a little more knowledge about this than I otherwise would have. So it's on my to-do list. It just hasn't been high on my to-do list.
Okay, that's fair. I'm good with that. So let's jump off of that. And let me just make sure I'm going to the right one here. 566.
5.7 is mobile home parks on page 52.
There you go. Yeah, I was looking at 5.68, but that's actually part of the soil vegetation one. So yes, so I've got a note down here that I made to myself, question mark with eliminate. I don't know if that's
Eliminate what?
eliminate the 5.7, but I don't, that could be me just talking to myself when I put that down there. Anybody have any thoughts on set 5.7 mobile home parks?
I don't, if you eliminated them, then they would be banned. You're wanting to ban the possibility of mobile home parks?
Sure. Again, I'm not quite sure why I put it down there, but I highlighted it for a reason, and you know, maybe it's something we should talk about. I mean, is that I don't know. Is that something that we want to encourage?
They're a nice, affordable senior living option. I'm not really a fan of mobile home parks in general, but there've been some decent ones that have been put together for seniors, and they're popular. So I wouldn't want to take that possibility away.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's not an issue.
I would think, I would think control of mobile parks is more a zoning thing than whether we have it in the bylaws or not. You probably want it in the bylaws sense.
I would agree with Walt. Yeah, we don't have an issue today, but yeah, we should have, they exist. So it's nice to see there's something in writing. It has some restrictions. There's a review. You have to submit plans, and you know. So I think we put this in there because someday that could happen. And as Sarah said, it is affordable living for seniors and yada yada yada. You know, it's not a bad thing. But again, there's not an issue today. I think it's something there that protects us. That there's a review process that has to happen. So if a developer came to the town, they would look at that, and then we would address it accordingly.
So we're better off to have that versus having nothing. And I'm not saying it's bad, but at least you have something on the books that has some guidelines.
Right.
Okay.
Mobile
point.
home parks are only allowed by special permit in residential B in the use table. So they're allowed in a big portion of the town by special permit, and you don't actually need a reason to deny a special permit. So it's pretty easy for the town to go, yeah, no, we don't want that.
Okay, that's good to know.
Speaking.
Yeah, no, that's good. So there's some provisions in there. There's rules and regulations, and they can be in certain places, and it's got to be done by a special permit. So that in and of itself is a separate entity. So, all right, that's good to know. Okay.
Temporary mobile home location. I actually like this section.
Which
It's-
section is that?
Oh, 5.8. Sorry, I thought we were done with 5.7.
Yeah, no, okay.
So 5.8, the first section where people are allowed to have a mobile home temporarily because their house has been damaged or destroyed by a disaster or made uninhabitable. That's actually a Mass General law that guarantees that. So we have to have that. But then this gets a little friendlier, where if you're constructing a new residence, you're allowed to have a temporary mobile home. And the fact that this section exists makes it easier for me to say, no, you can't pull a camper onto the site. You can go through this process, and lease a temporary mobile home while you're building your house, if that's really the road you want to go down. But we have a process for temporary housing, so you can't just live in a camper. So I
So-
think this helps.
So a camper is different than a mobile home?
Correct. An RV.
Okay,
And we don't want
that's
people living in RVs.
yeah, no, and I'm not saying that we do, but it's statutorily, it's different. They're treated differently.
They're different animals. I mean, the things that they bring in for someone has a house fire, there are companies that have mobile homes that are specifically to bring in, and you hook them up to the septic system properly. It's not a camper with some, who knows when they're dumping their,
Okay, yeah.
you know,
It's kind of, and it's not a great example, but when they had Katrina, the FEMA housing that they were talking about, those were specifically designed, mobile homes that were brought in for a specific purpose.
yeah.
To-
I've dealt with a lot of
versus-
house fires, and the mobile homes that they bring in they're not bad. And they're properly hooked up to the septic system. And that's the big thing that's good about them versus people trying to live in a camper and you have no idea what they're doing with their waste.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's good.
That's been an issue in town that's been an issue in town a couple times.
Dave, we
That's
couldn't
been an
hear you.
issue in town a couple of times, is people living in campers on their property. I know the Board of Health has had some problems enforcing those laws, but they finally ended up doing
Is Walt trying to talk, or is it just background noise making Dave impossible to hear?
I don't know. Walt, are you trying to talk?
No, my mistake. I thought I was on mute.
Okay. Dave, can you
Dave.
say that again?
Yeah, Dave, please.
Yeah,
You're all broken up.
There's been a couple instances in town where people have had in-laws come in for a couple of months and set up an RV on their property. And the Board of Health was all over that and telling them they couldn't do it. But there is Board of Health laws that the DEP has put out there that you can't live in a camper. I don't know what the time frame is, but there's a certain time frame you can't stay in it for any longer than. But I know there's some people that were really raising Cain about that with the Board of Health because they wanted their in-laws to stay for June and July in a camper on their property. And they can't.
If
Yeah,
Uncle Joe pulls up with a camper and lives in your driveway for 2 weeks, I kind of just don't want to know about it. But if it's going to be for all summer, then that's a different
Right.
thing.
Well, Sarah, know what
That's what I'm-
happens every time is we get a call from a neighbor. That's how we get it. The
Yeah.
camper's been there for all summer and people are going in and out. That's how we find out, to Dave's point. So we have gotten calls like that. We send down the Neshoba septic sanitary engineering visits. We have nice knock on the door. We ask is someone living there. So typically it comes from a complaint from a neighbor. Other than that, again, there's a lot of campers in people's yards. We don't know if someone's living there until we have someone.
And I actually don't mind if there's some process to be able to temporarily stay in a camper, if there's a process that you guys have, and I think you actually do have some sort of process.
Yeah, we have a process. They have to show that it's been the sanitary waste, it's been pumped, and so we have a record and everything else. So it is allowed, but as David said, there's a short time limit on that. Again, it's to everybody's and the individuals living there. You want to make sure it's pumped. That's all. So there's a record of it. They show us a slip that someone's come in, they've paid.
So if grandma pulls up in the camper, then there is a process to go through Board of Health for that.
Yeah, they can come through. We send out the engineer. We issue a temporary, and then again we ask to see either we go there or they send us a copy of of what they're pumped. So
Hey, Glenn, let me ask you a question, and I don't want to get too specific about it, and I don't want to bog us down with it, but on that same lines, the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, has gotten calls. We get them every year. People that have property out on the lakes where they drive their RV in and park it, and they leave it there for months. So good, bad, legal, illegal, you know?
And they should notify us, and we would do just what I just stated. What I just stated, they might pull a temporary permit. We just want to make sure it's getting pumped. So it's not, it's a sanitary condition. So, but there is a limit on how much they do it. And people love to do that. I've got a lot and I pull up, I don't have to do anything to the cottage that's there because I'm living in the RV, it's clean, it's got a bathroom, so forth and so on. So there are people who abuse that. So it's not just Sarah or I get a call going, this has been there for like 4 months. They're there in April and May and they're still there in July and August or whatever. So
I would like better teeth to be able to keep people from living in campers like that.
Yeah, we don't like it, but again, we've been a summer community since the 40s and 50s and 60s, and part of the issues around the lake that the generations are now turning those into full-time homes and everything else, and they're small lots. There's all types of issues based on lot size and the proximity to the water and everything else. We always try to make it work because we don't want to take away from someone who's it's a financial situation. We wouldn't, we try to make it better. So, but it's tough. I can get those numbers for you. Sarah, you might be aware of some of that stuff anyway, but I could have Rick Metcalf send you, Bill, what the regs are for that.
Yeah, I'd really be curious to see those because I mean, I got an email yesterday from somebody wanting to know if we were going to be putting new, because you knew we were meeting, are you going to be working on new zoning regulations to prevent people from parking RVs out on the lakes? It's like, no, we're not going to be doing that right now.
Yeah.
But look, again, it's a process. So
that is something that we should work on and figure out where we want to stand on that.
Yeah, there's regulations in place. I'll have Rick, write up something and send that to you. And again, as Bill, for your board, you should know what that is. So I think we're already protected. You just have to identify. Yep, here's the address, and they've been there. Again, and you could physically write around. And again, we always start friendly, Sarah. We knock on the doors, and we've been told you've been here a couple of months, and you really should have X. So it's an issue. So
well, I don't think by zoning they're allowed to live in them. Period.
Yeah.
If people are using them as a day thing, a place to change their clothes and stuff like that, then and they're not really living in it, then that's getting into a really gray area. And then you still have questions about what are they doing with the toilet water.
Right. Yeah. I'll have Rick write something up so that you're comfortable, everybody's comfortable that is covered. We talked about this. There was another bylaw, it might have been general, but we've had vacant lots, and all of a sudden there's a camper there or they're an RV. And where we get a notice is, as a small town, someone's put a permit to put a pole there as if they were building. Guess what? It's an RV and they want to get some power off the street on a pole so they can connect to it. So the electric company is smart enough, they call us. So again, a small town, right, Dave? So you sort of, people observe what's going around, and we try to act together to create a safe environment. So, but that happens too, Bill. Vacant lot, knows something's there, and then it grows and so forth and so on. So, and it's a concern. So
it's interesting because some of these RVs have a greater value than some of the camps that they're parked next to.
Oh yeah.
Because they're not giving those things away.
Yeah, they're 150,000 easy, for some of those things. So, but people do, that's what they do, travel around the country and those things. So anyway.
So, okay, excellent. Thanks for that clarification. But if you could get something to us, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, up next, 5.10 site plan review. Anybody have any thoughts about this?
Well, do we want, it's getting to be after 7 o'clock, the site plan review.
That's a great point, Dave.
It's kind of a lengthy thing. Do we want to tackle this, or do we want to wait and go right into site plan review at our next meeting?
I think that's a good suggestion because we're not gonna, I hadn't looked at the clock, but that's a great point. So let's cut off the discussions on that. Now for our next meeting, what do you want to tackle? obviously we pick up with site plan review. We got site plan review, developmental rate limitations, adult entertainment, open space and residential development. It appears there's some big ones here.
Yep.
So what do you think would be a reasonable number to tackle?
I think site plan review could be one meeting.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that. I was thinking site plan review could take up an hour easily.
Okay, then here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put 5.10, and just because I'll put 5.11 on there. If we happen to get done and we can deal with it, we will have posted and it'll be fine. And we'll just leave it at those two things, and we'll go from there. Everybody okay with that?
Sounds great to me. Yeah, sounds great to me.
Now, getting back on our schedule, we're going first and third Thursdays. So that would put us at February 3rd. And Sarah's got a conflict, so she probably, in all likelihood, will not be joining us, but she may write something up and get it to us. So,
I might do a phone thing.
okay, whatever works for you. I just don't want you to feel pressured to have to be here. You know, things happen, we're gonna miss things, and again, it's not like we're making a decision on doing something with it right now. So you'll get another bite at the apple, but I'll leave that up to your discretion. So are we good for February 3rd? Everybody okay with that?
Yes, Glenn
Yep.
Hathaway.
Okay. All right, I'll put something together. I don't know.
Is it the 4th?
What's that?
Is it the
Third.
4th?
No,
The
it's the
third?
third.
The 3rd is the Thursday?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll put something together. I don't know what Brian's gonna decide on Zoom meetings and stuff, so, you know, stand by on that. We may be meeting in person, we may not, but I'll let you know one way or another. So, okay, excellent. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night and stay safe out there.
Thank
Bill.
you. Good.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Right.